Okay, Rich Whiteman again, continuing on the vein of confusion. I'm having a hard time getting my handle around the difference between RS1 and RS0. If I'm less than RCS1, I'm basically equivalent to an RS1, and therefore I'm in the similar soils universe. Are you thinking of RS0 being either background or, say, a pre-characterized location such that we might have lower acceptance criteria? And if it's rock, I got nothing, right?
The RS0, we are thinking of in terms of it being more stringent than RS1. And again, to throw out possibilities that I'm not saying, it would be something, and maybe we get rid of it, I don't know. But I like it. You could create that category a number of different ways. One, you could say RS0, we want to be more stringent than RS1, make it half the value.
Oh, don't.
That's one way of doing it.
That's what Connecticut is doing.
Yes, that's what Connecticut is doing. So there's a, and again, we're not telling people what to put where. We just say if this is the material you're dealing with, then here are kind of the rules that will apply. So having another category that basically is if you have this kind of soil, or if you have your facility and this is the only soil that you want, the controls, the requirements, the oversight, the hassle that DEP will give you will be much, 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 much less. So I don't see a downside of identifying an RS0 as a category that, if you're down there, we're worrying much less about it. So it could be, I think Connecticut, one way of doing it is half the RS1, just to make that kind of, this is stuff you really don't have to worry about. From our perspective, another way of looking at it is similar soils. And if you do the comparison of the similar soil numbers and RCS1 or the RS1 numbers, there is a gap there, or potentially a gap there. Not in all cases, not across the board, but the similar soils in general would be cleaner, have lower concentrations than RS1. So is it worth having that other category? I don't know. But I don't think it hurts.
No, it hurts.
So,
Another question from the web. Will the seasonal groundwater table need to be determined at the receiving location?
well, that's another level of detail question that it would be caveated by, we haven't written out the requirements for all of these things, but in general, I think one would want to know hydrogeological information about the receiving location. And that probably would be one of the things that you routinely would be looking for. Flip side, if you don't know where the groundwater is, then you don't know enough about the location that you're proposing to bring large amounts of material to. So I think that's probably representative of something that we look at.
Andrew Daniels. Paul, you talked about a sliding scale for controls. Are you also thinking about a sliding scale for the municipal approvals as well? So in other words, moving clean soils under a certain volume would require notice, and RS2 soils over a different volume would require approval. I mean, right now, the department enters into ACOs to move COM97 soils with no municipal approval.
This is the COP97. Just remind everybody.
But I'm saying a more contaminated soil.
Just the reason that we don't require a specific local approval for for a landfill to take COM97 soils as part of a capping enclosure project is that the landfill already has a site assignment, which is a fairly heavy-duty local approval. And there is a public information and comment process that we go through in terms of soliciting local comments on the project and working very closely with boards of health. To go back to your broader question about where we're going in the future, again, there's kind of a theme this afternoon. We don't know yet, if you haven't picked that up already. And I don't know. It may be that for certain things that are in the lower left-hand corner down here, that there may be some different requirements than things we would want in the upper right-hand corner, and that's something that we're going to have a conversation about. So, sorry. There's no good way for me to set up. That's a good thing.
Thank you. John Regan, Mass Senate. Will soil management plans require an end-use plan as part of the plan? Meaning, maybe it's part of the local approval process, but I think it makes a big difference, looking at the chart up there. What's going to be the end game here? Is it going to be a golf course? Is it going to be a senior housing? I think that plays a lot. So I was wondering if that would be part of any soil management plan. And I think that might be a good process for local officials in the communities to come up with some kind of end use and then base the soils and et cetera off that.
I was hoping you were going to answer that, really hadn't. One of the things that we're struggling with is, given some of the big projects that may take place over the course of 20 or 30 years, the final kind of reclamation plan for the final grades and the final end use may not be set early on. So I think something like this and the use of AULs, where it exists, then you can build upon that and lock it in. I think we also have to somehow take into account situations where people don't know what their redevelopment plan is yet, and it's probably not productive to try to predict 30 years down the line. But I think our general approach would be, if you don't know and can't tell and haven't locked in, either through agreement with the local community or in other ways, what that end use plan is. So the soil management plan would be for how you manage the soil during operation. And then I view it as kind of a reclamation plan for the final disposal, disposal is a bad word, the final end use of the location. I think we want to have both of those. The final end use, I think we have to envision that there might be situations or particular locations where that isn't as defined as it would eventually be, and we'd have to take that into account, have that, and part of that would be having that recognized as part of the local approval, that that's still to be determined. And from a kind of soil management aspect of it, if you don't know how it's going to be used, then something like this, where you have the cleanest, the cleaner material that would support any use, so that the soil would not cause a problem, would be appropriate, or having activity and use limitations, some land use controls which set boundaries for how that would be used. So I think there are ways of kind of taking that into account and building it in as much as possible up front, but recognizing that if you're talking about what's going to happen 30 years from now, it has to be flexible enough to do that as well, and do it safely.
Another comment from the web. Failure to take into account fissures in the quarry's bedrock may impact private artesian drinking water supplies not within the immediate area. Some areas may be served by municipal water. However, private water supplies nearby may be affected, lacking a comprehensive hydrogeologic survey.
So, and that's one of the reasons why we would have people looking at what the surrounding area is, the part of the less or more sensitive areas would take into account G21 areas, which include use of the groundwater, not only as public water supply, but as private water supplies as well. And one of the things we're looking at, if you look at the RC S1 categories, it has distances. One of the things that we're considering is the 500 feet distance that's there appropriate? Should it be bigger, should it be smaller? Well, should it be bigger is probably the biggest question. In order to make sure that you're catching areas, we'd want to have more control and make sure that that the potential exposures, whether it's from groundwater or whether it's from the soil directly, are being accounted for and addressed before it actually starts operation.
And just one other kind of caveat to all of this, that this is a really good reason for the municipalities to know that a project in the municipality is happening, and to have notice about what they're taking in, because MassDEP does not approve new private wells, and but municipal officials can. And so the issue is, if there are existing private wells in the area, we would want them to be identified. That is definitely not just a potential, it's a current drinking water area. But you can put a private well in almost anywhere. And I live in Boston, and I have some neighbors with private wells, even though we are not in a potentially productive aquifer. They just don't like paying water rates. And yes, Deb's looking at me. Yeah, I have some crazy neighbors. But I think we would be looking to the municipality then to know that if somebody's going to put in a new private supply, that they would be taking this into account. I think that's an important connection. So, other comments?
Okay, we're wearing you down. Excellent.